I'd say that having great leaders guiding the games is the best antidote for the bullshit side of the industry, which most times it's having those stakeholders who have nothing to do with the games, who don't care about the games, but they are driving the production. You know, games are serious business and they make serious money. So if you don't have that top leader, that top creative mind driving the development, when he or she is directly responsible for the game quality and success, it's very easy to hijack the team without nobody paying attention. To understand Nintendo's importance in the games industry is no simple task. In 1982, Atari released what is considered the worst game in history, E.T. The market at that point was already flooding with crappy and disposable games. People didn't want anything to do with video games at that time, and that generated a major crash in the Western market. But that was the perfect scenario for a company that had been around since 1889, making physical playing cards called Karuta, and that company was Nintendo. Nintendo took the Western by storm. In contrast with those uninspired and cheap games that had been out there in the market, Nintendo started to bring real quality games to the market, and people started loving them. They were fun, engaging both on the arcades and consoles, the Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES or Famicom. So even the very start, Nintendo was known for its high standards for quality. And that's very key because they kept that trait since the early days until today. Nintendo definitely doesn't have the most realistic games, the biggest maps, or the coolest facial expressions, but they deliver some of the highest quality games on the market, both in characters, in narrative, and gameplay. Nintendo hardware is also not the most advanced with the most processing power or graphics, but when Nintendo releases a new console, it's guaranteed that they're gonna have a unique feature, something people haven't seen before. Every new generation of console brings something new and unexpected. In a way, I feel that Nintendo did what Steve Jobs has done multiple times with Apple over and over back in the day. And they are willing to take big risks, which is something that few other companies do to that level in order to achieve that uniqueness, that innovation. The Wii U was that. The Wii U was the biggest flop in Nintendo's history. The Wii U was roughly half of the sales of the Nintendo GameCube, which was definitely not very good already. But the premise of the Wii U was actually quite interesting if you think about it. It didn't resonate with players, it didn't come to fruition on the market, but it was still a valid attempt to bring something new, something unique to the market. So they were testing and delivering. And I feel we need to value when companies do stuff like that, because we as players, many times we complain about companies delivering always the same things, always, the same trends, making the same types of games, not taking big risks. But when a company does that, like Nintendo, I feel that we need to validate that somehow, even if it's not a success. We need to understand that it's part of the innovation path. The Wii U was part of the innovation path to the Switch, which came after as the biggest hit ever in the history of Nintendo, bigger than anything that Nintendo had released before. And if you look at the core of the Switch, it was all there in the Wii U, So that innovation over and over, the pursuit for innovation is very interesting, very good to see at companies. While the competitors of Nintendo were driving just prices and better processors and better graphics to the market. We can kind of compare it to foldable phones, I think. I am not a big fan of the premise of foldable phones. Maybe I'm simply not the target audience for that. But I don't buy it. But I think it's great that companies are trying to do that, trying to do something different, trying to find the next big thing, the next interesting technology and advancement to the market. And that might move the market in unexpected ways, just like the Wii U resulted in the Switch. And when we go back to think about games and the industry, we can say that the last decade didn't see any major transformative technologies to the way we play games, except of course mobile games. Like it or not, mobile games are the biggest thing that happened in the last 10 years or so. But when we're talking about PC and consoles, Nintendo is definitely one of the main drivers of innovation and new technologies, new ways of playing, the best practices that we have in games. They were the biggest thing in the 80s and the 90s, but still today they are still very relevant, one of the main players, and that's great to see. Other players like Atari or Sega didn't have the same level of success. At one point in history, they kind of declined and never got back up, at least until now. And we have a name for that. Actually, two: Shigeru Miyamoto. Shigeru Miyamoto is definitely the most iconic and relevant game designer of all time. Undisputed. And we don't have a lot of big names, unfortunately. It's not like the film industry where we have like Steven Spielberg and Ridley Scott. We do have a couple though, and very important names. Besides Shigeru Miyamoto-san, we have of course Hideo Kojima, we have Hidetaka Miyazaki, the director of the Souls games. And for non-Japanese designers, we have Todd Howard, the director of the Elder Scrolls series, and Sid Meier, the creator of the Civilization games, which we talked about in the last video, so go check it out if you haven't already. And I can also mention one of my favorite directors, Josh Sawyer, director of Fallout New Vegas, one of the best and most acclaimed RPGs of all time. But I think we need more names. It's not a coincidence that Nintendo's image and quality are so much associated with Miyamoto-san. I've been in the games industry for roughly 10 years, and I know exactly what happens when we don't have a creative vision, a creative leader on top of the games. And we all do, because we see the uninspired, the same games over and over coming from even big companies, big names, like the EAs and the Disneys and the Activisions. And of course, games are a collective effort of dozens, hundreds of incredibly talented people, incredibly talented developers giving their best to make awesome games. But in the day-to-day of development, if you don't have that strong leadership, that strong vision at the top, it's so easy to get lost. Lost in money, lost in time, lost in business requirements, because they're all there, right? Every day. And that's why I believe we need more of those great leaders driving the industry. We need to attract them and keep them in. Because you see, Nintendo keeps making great games, even though Miyamoto-san is not the director of all of the Nintendo games. But they have already established a culture of how to make those great games, a culture for higher standards of quality and gameplay and design. It's the same thing with Sid Meier and the Civilization series. Sid is not the director for all Civ games, but he's always there involved, and they have created a structure, a culture of strong design principles and ways to make great Civ games. They have the mindset, and that's why they are continuously able to create those better games without getting lost in the business sides of things. I'd say that having great leaders guiding the games is the best antidote for the bullshit side of the industry, which most times it's having those stakeholders who have nothing to do with the games, who don't care about the games, but they are driving the production. Games are serious business and they make serious money. So if you don't have that top leader, that top creative mind driving the development, when he or she is directly responsible for the game quality and success, it's very easy to hijack the team without nobody paying attention. So we need more Miyamotos, we need more Kojimas, we need more Sid Meiers. In my opinion, that's how we advance as a creative medium. Of course, that's incredibly hard to do, but we as an industry need to keep pursuing those people over and over. And we as players need to be acknowledging those great leaders every chance we get. Many times you hear those horror behind the scenes stories when one executive, ruins the whole thing and release crappy games. But most of the time it's not so dramatic. Well, sometimes it is. But the usual scenario is the day-to-day. Every day you get more tasks to complete and bugs to fix, and there's salaries to pay, and there's deadlines to comply to. There's everything. There's good colleagues and bad colleagues that you don't want to work with. It's the whole package. It's a job. So imagine how you maintain creativity and a great vision for the game in the middle of all of that throughout many years of development. So somebody's job needs to be to hold that vision, to guard that vision until the game's complete. So the vision is strong, in the day-to-day until the end, because that's so easily lost, let me tell you. So I'm not talking about technology. Technology is unstoppable. AI is going to dominate the entire market. We're always going to get better graphics cards and processors and all of that. But creativity is not a given. And money talks loud. If we don't have those creative leaders driving the industry, in my vision, that's when the missteps happen a lot. It's when we see those same copycats and those same uninspiring mechanics and characters and the same stories again and again, because nobody's reputation's on the line. Companies don't have reputations like that. It's different, it's impersonal. When a big director, a big name has a reputation, a creative reputation to maintain, and they are deeply associated with the quality of the game, it's different. Because even when companies do questionable things in terms of design or monetization practices, players complain, they might even boycott the game or the company, but at the end of the day, they keep buying the products. So companies keep generating revenue anyway, and they can repeat those efforts again in the future. So yeah, we as a game industry need more names like that, more leaders. We need the next generation of Miyamotos and Kojimas and Sid Meier's. But again, games are a collective effort, and I don't mean that those leaders, those directors are the sole responsibles for the game quality. Like, everybody's so important. You have QA. QA is incredibly important for the games not to be released in a buggy state. And engineers have the power to optimize the hell out of graphics, so you have those cool graphics, those killing graphics, in as many computers and as many consoles as you can. And writers have the incredible power to develop the characters and storylines that we love, that we're going to connect to, that's going to be memorable for us, like Mario, like Zelda and Link, and so many other games. But again, if we don't have the guardian of the creative vision at the top, it's so easy to, even if you have the best team possible, lots of talented people, you still at the end have an uninspiring game. Because that person, those leaders, those creative minds, need to be negotiating with the stakeholders, the business people, because they're always there. That's the reality of games. But we also need to have the creative counterpart for them. Because yeah, games take a lot of time to make, and a lot happens during this time. It's very hard and very unlikely that game development is going to be very linear. It's not like that. So yeah, those were my thoughts. I consider Nintendo to be one of the most inspiring and compelling game companies in the world. And I hope they continue to thrive and give us, some of the most amazing games that we can play. And I'm eager to see what the next generation of Nintendo console is going to look like. And of course, the next generation of great designers. Thank you very much, guys. If you enjoyed, subscribe and leave a comment below. What's your favorite Nintendo game? And what game are you most waiting for? And I'll catch you guys next time.